If learning a new language is one of your goals for 2026, this video is going to be your starting point. I'm going to share the exact blueprint I always use when I want to start learning a new language and reach a solid B1 level. Now, in this video, we are focusing on B1 because I feel like B1 is the first real milestone where you can actually use the language in real life. You know, you can talk to people, you can communicate, maybe not perfectly, probably not perfectly, but you can do it. And also because moving beyond B1 requires a different set of exercises and strategies. This is called the intermediate plateau, and I've made separate videos about that. So if you're starting from zero, I'm going to walk you through a very clear and simple system so that you know what to focus on. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And now if you're ready to learn a new language in 2026, let's get started. First things first, let's talk about resources. So when I first start learning a new language, I pick one main resource and I kind of make it the center of everything I do. That main resource can be a textbook, it can be an online course. That's usually my preference. But I also recently started learning a language that is not very popular. There are like barely any textbooks. The only textbook I found was from like 1992 or 94, so it was not great. So I actually went with one-on-one lessons with an italki teacher. This is not sponsored by italki or anything. My preference is usually a textbook, but as long as it's something structured, it's gonna work. Then on the side, I might add a few secondary resources like a YouTube channel that I really like to watch or a podcast that I really like listening to, but the focus always stays on that one main thing. Now, this might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but I really don't think you can go wrong when choosing a textbook or a course or a teacher. They all pretty much teach the same thing. I mean, the methods might be different, but the content itself is going to be the same. So when you're choosing your main resource, just make sure that it matches your learning style. So for example, I really like learning through dialogues. So I always go for something like Assimil because it has lots of dialogues. And also now that I'm working with a teacher, I also told her that I really like learning through dialogues and she prepares little dialogues for me for each lesson. For you, it can be something completely different. As long as it matches your learning preferences, you're going to be fine. Okay, another thing that's surprisingly important as well is it should be visually appealing to you. For example, if everyone recommends this one textbook and it's like supposedly the best textbook out there, but you really don't like the look of it, you don't like the layout, or maybe the font is too small for you, then you're just not gonna use it and it's going to slow you down no matter how popular this textbook or this course might be. The only non-negotiable for me, and to be honest, it should be for you as well, is audio. Whatever you choose, make sure that it has audio. And other than that, just pick something that you genuinely enjoy. Okay, before we actually go into the methods that I recommend, let's talk about what my day-to-day looks like when I start a new language. A beginner language requires a lot of attention. So when I pick a new language that I want to learn, it usually becomes my main focus. But that doesn't mean that I study every single day. I don't. I usually aim for 5 days a week and then I might take 2 days off. It's usually Saturday and Sunday. I don't really like to study during the weekend. In terms of time, I find that a focused 30-minute study session really goes a long way. So that's usually what I aim for, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't do more. If I want to, then I will, but 30 minutes is my absolute minimum. I don't follow a strict routine, but that's kind of what I do every single week. So once you've chosen your main resource, the first phase is going to be building a very strong base. The first thing that you're going to focus on is going to be pronunciation. One of my favorite exercises for this is called shadowing. Shadowing is very, very simple. You basically just repeat after someone else, preferably a native speaker, and you try to match their rhythm, pronunciation, and you basically try to sound like them. That's why audio is non-negotiable, because you're going to practice shadowing with that audio from your textbook or your course. Of course, you can do shadowing with anything. You can play a random video on YouTube and do shadowing with that. But I find that at the beginning, it's easier to do it with something that's very simple. And you know, the first few lessons in the textbook or in the course are usually just like, you know, learning how to introduce yourself. People usually speak very slowly in those recordings as well. So it's easy to repeat after them and really like hear all the sounds. And at the beginning, it can be challenging to even hear where one word ends and the other one starts. So you want to choose something that is very, very simple. If you're working with a teacher, repeat everything they say. You can literally just tell them, that's what I did with my teacher. I told her, I want you to be very strict with me and I want you to correct my mistakes. Like when I mispronounce something, I won't get offended. I really want to work on my pronunciation. And now, because like, you know, at the beginning, we didn't really know each other and she wouldn't correct me, but now once I told her, she's actually like, no, like you said this wrong. It's actually pronounced like this. So yeah, pronunciation should be the first thing you focus on. Next up, we have the most common words. What I like to do when I start learning a new language is I print a list of about 100 most common verbs in said language, right? And I don't memorize it. I just keep it on my desk. And anytime I want to say something, I look at my list and, you know, over time, I just naturally, not even memorize them. Over time, I just naturally absorb them, I guess. What is going to happen when you learn the most common verbs is A, your speaking skills are going to improve. You're going to be able to speak from the very beginning, but also B, your listening comprehension is going to improve as well, because those words are high frequency. Up until B1, the conversations that you're going to be having are going to be very basic and they are going to be about everyday things. So people are going to use a lot of those high frequency words, so it will be easier for you to understand them. When it comes to grammar, the first thing I focus on is the present tense, because you can say so much using just the present tense. You can talk about your everyday life, about your hobbies, you can introduce yourself, and in many languages, you can actually talk about the future as well. Most everyday conversations rely very heavily on the present tense, so if your goal is communication from the very beginning, this is where you put your energy first. And finally, we have speaking. Personally, I try to speak from the very beginning, but don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to book a speaking class with a native speaker, because that's going to be way too difficult for you. I like to practice speaking in very low pressure situations. So again, shadowing is going to be perfect here. I feel like shadowing is the perfect middle ground between passive and active learning. You are still working on your pronunciation and speaking, you are getting used to speaking, but you don't have to produce your own sentences, which can be challenging at the very beginning. It's a great exercise and I highly recommend. But what I also like to do is I basically say everything out loud. Whenever I write something down, I also say it out loud. Whenever I read a dialogue in my textbook, I will read it out loud. Whenever I have my one-on-one lessons with my teacher, I will also say everything out loud and repeat everything after her, because this lets me, again, practice speaking and my brain and my mouth get used to speaking a new language. What's so challenging about actually speaking is that it's just something so new, and I kind of like to think about it as like a muscle that you need to train, right? So with practice, you're going to get better and better. And what we want to do is essentially we want to send a signal to our brains and be like, this is normal, we do this every day, or like we do this very often, and it's nothing to be scared of. Then when you're actually going to have a conversation with someone in that language, you're not going to freeze and it's going to be way less stressful. Don't get me wrong, it might still be a bit awkward, but it's going to be way less stressful. That's why I think it's very important to practice speaking from the very beginning. That way you have a lot of time to get used to it and it becomes easier and easier with practice. Once you have a solid base, the next chapter is going to be all about expanding. By this point, you know the present tense, you're familiar with the most common verbs, you know a good amount of vocab, and your pronunciation is also quite good. So now we build on top of that. The first things you're going to learn are going to be a past tense and a future tense. We are at around A2 here, so our goal is communication and not perfection, and we just are looking for a way to say that something happened in the past. I know that in many languages there are multiple past tenses and multiple future tenses, but again, at this point we are just looking for a way to say that something happened in the past. It doesn't have to be perfect. And once you can talk about the present, the future, and the past, your conversations automatically become richer and more natural. And just to be clear, I don't really sit down and study grammar as a separate thing. If you are following a textbook or a course, again, as I said, you are following your main resource, grammar is already built in. Depending on what you chose, grammar is going to get introduced in different ways. So I'm not telling you how to study grammar, I'm just telling you when I usually focus on different things. So yeah, there you go, you're simply following your main resource and focusing on different things at different stages, if that makes sense. At the same time, you start expanding what you can express. So learn how to express your opinions and how to make basic comparisons. Also, what I really like to do at that stage is learn a few adjectives, because I feel like when you first start learning a new language, you learn like 3 different adjectives and you use them over and over again. At least that's what happens to me. So like at the beginning, everything is good, bad, interesting, pretty, and that's basically it. But even if you only learn 2 new adjectives, you are instantly going to elevate your speech and you are going to sound way more advanced than you actually are. So it's a very, very simple trick. So instead of only saying that something is pretty, you can say that it's beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, or instead of always using the word interesting, you can say fascinating. And this takes very little effort, but you instantly sound more natural and more expressive. While you're doing all this, you're also going to increase the amount of input that you get. So this is where all those YouTube channels, podcasts, TV shows, movies come into play. Choose content that is a little bit above your level. A good rule is 60-40 or 70-30, where 60 or 70% should be things you already know, and then the rest should be new. So for example, if you're listening to a podcast episode, by the end, you should still be able to tell what the episode was about, but also maybe you found a few new words that you didn't know before. That's how it works. You can still do shadowing here, and you can repeat useful phrases as well. Actually, learning whole phrases is one of my favorite language learning methods, and I highly recommend it. It's so much better than learning words in isolation, because when you memorize the whole phrase, when you're actually talking to someone, you don't have to think about the grammar behind it. You just remember the phrase that you learned and you say it and you know that it's correct. So yeah, when I watch something and I hear a phrase that I could actually see myself using in real life, I pause and I repeat it out loud, or I write it down. So yeah, there you go. That's how input helps you improve. And now let's move on to output. As you move closer to B1, output becomes more important. One of my favorite ways to practice your active skills is through journaling. I feel like this is such a low pressure way to practice. There's literally no one to judge you. You can make as many mistakes as you want. You can always correct them. It's not a big deal. So I highly, highly recommend journaling. And also what I really love about journaling is that you can make it very personal. So let's say that at the end of every day, you just write a paragraph about your day. If you don't know how to say something, you're just going to quickly look it up. And that's a very good thing. We want words that you're going to use often, that are relevant to your life. You know, those words that are more niche and more advanced and just words that you use less often, they're useful too, don't get me wrong, but you can learn them later through exposure. If you want to practice speaking, you guys know I feel like I talk about this method in every single one of my videos, but I love recording myself. I used to do that so much when I was learning French, and it works like a charm. You can introduce that method at B1. I would start with literally 1 to 2 minutes. Pick a prompt or a topic that you're going to talk about, hit record on your phone, try to speak for a minute or two, and then listen to that recording, catch any mistakes that you made, and then you can re-record that same prompt, or you can wait like a few hours or a day or even a week and then re-record that same prompt. And then gradually you can build up to 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, even 15 minutes. But I feel like that comes a little bit later. But again, the goal here is not perfection. We just want to get used to speaking. And the good thing is that there's literally no one to judge you. And if you want, you can even delete the recording right after you listen to it, so there's no evidence. What's also a really good idea is after you listen to something or after you watch something, you can quickly summarize it or express your opinion, say what you liked and what you didn't like. If you write down new words that you learned from something that you listened to or watched, you can try forming your own sentences with those words. You can try using them in your review, in your summary. So you're constantly feeding your brain with input and then immediately turning that into output. So basically what you're doing is turning your passive skills into active skills. All right, so that's how you move from 0 to B1. That's the system I always use when I start a new language. I really hope this video was helpful. If you are already at B1, you can check out my other videos about overcoming the intermediate plateau, because as I said, that stage requires a different set of exercises and strategies. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what language you are going to learn in 2026. I wish you all the best. Don't forget to like this video, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.